Like a lot of people, you've put a lot on hold. Eating in restaurants, praying in your house of worship, attending sporting events, all to protect your health. So as we all start to get back, the same people who have been protecting your health all along are the people doing the most to keep your health safe. Always. We're open for emergency care and for appointments safely for you. CHI St. Luke's Health Memorial.
Welcome to the Chamber Connect, connecting business to community. My name is Tara Watson-Watkins, and I'm President and CEO of the Lufkin-Angelina County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Blake Pollino of BP Media Group. Blake, how are you today?
I am awesome. Super excited about this episode that we just did with Kevin Langston and Rufus Duncan, talking all about the Economic Development Partnership. And if you are in small business, if you are in this community, this is an awesome episode to listen to. I mean, these two gentlemen talk very candidly about economic development, in our community, growing a business in East Texas, and all of the different assets that we have and ways to grow a business and start a business. So I'm super excited about it. So let's jump into this episode.
We are joined here with Kevin Langston, Board Chairman of the Economic Development Partnership, and Rufus Duncan, CEO of Higginbotham's, and someone who is very passionate about economic development in Angelina County. And we're excited to have you all here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, why don't you kind of give the background history of the EDP, and for the listeners that aren't, familiar with that and how it came to be? And
Sure. So the Economic Development Partnership, actually the full name is the Lufkin-Angelina County Economic Development Partnership, and so we call it the EDP, obviously for short, was originally formed in 1995. A group of businessmen, local leaders decided or felt the need for economic development. That predated the state's allocation of the sales tax for economic development purposes. So cities were, up to their own to be able to create economic development initiatives, and so Lufkin acknowledged the need for that, and so I believe the original chairman or the original trustees were Joe Berry and Louis Bernal and C.G. Macklin and Henry Hollybeck and Ronnie Robinson, I think Murphy George, and Larry Phillips with the college.
those are some good names.
So they got together and created the EDP with the initiative of economic development, not only for the city of Lufkin, but for the county, countywide. And then it continued to operate, or continues to operate, but it's obviously shifted through the years with the bringing in of the Economic Development Corporation with the Lufkin 4B. So it's a public-private partnership. We have businesses throughout the county that participate as investors through a dues structure. We have cash that we have been given over the years, either through the operations or through gifts, to be able to redeploy through the community in whatever needs are identified and met.
Right. And then about in 2016, the EDP aligned with the day-to-day operations of the Chamber.
I became the chairman of the Economic Development Partnership, the EDP, in 2016. And at the time, the EDP was more of a separate entity, kind of going it alone, if you will. It has morphed over the years with how it's been operated and who's kind of operated or been in charge. But in 2016, we recognized that we have resources, but we didn't have the manpower to get that out into the public space. So in talking with Jim Johnson, who was the chairman of the president of the chamber at the time, felt like that we could align our synergies with the employment of the chamber and with their labor force, if you will, and then our resources, that we would be able to come back together and have a more unified initiative towards economic development partnership or economic development.
So for those of you listening, just so that you know, the mission of the EDP is really to promote economic development, expansion, and diversification in the Lufkin Angelina County area through economic programs, charitable donations, and educational sessions. And it's been a great program for our county to have, not just our city, whereas the 4B, as we talked with Bob Sanford a couple of weeks ago, is focused on the city of Lufkin, whereas the EDP is really focused on all of Angelina County. And it's a great partnership to be able to work together. When something doesn't fit one, we've got another organization to be able to turn to be able to look at things for countywide.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We really believe that it's a cooperative effort. The 4B certainly has their directives and their objectives that also align with the community as a whole. We feel like we can complement that. We certainly don't want to compete. We can't compete, wouldn't want to, but we feel like we can complement that. And as you pointed out, the 4B is limited to the corporate limits of the city of Lufkin, given the fact that they're funded by tax dollars. We're privately funded for the most part, and so we have a broader reach, there. So we feel like we can complement those initiatives and benefit the county as a whole.
So I think one thing that people are kind of familiar with is the Made in Lufkin that was done through the EDP several years ago. And why don't you tell a little bit about the Made in Lufkin?
So as most things happen, we get in a boardroom, and we try to determine, how do we try to invoke, incubate, or just, start up some way of creating economic development. And economic development is so many things to so many people. For some, it's just jobs. Others, it's quality of life. Others, it's maybe has more of a governmental role to it. It's where can your kids play, or where can the wife shop, or where can the executive go and do whatever, golf or whatnot. So it's an all-encompassing thing. We know that education, we know quality of life, we know infrastructure, we know tax base, we know employment. All of that is symbiotically connected. And so trying to figure out the path, the conduit, or the direction that the EDP can serve and be able to be that connector is always a challenge. It's a good challenge, but it is a challenge. So when we throw things against the wall to see what sticks, I think someone had, and I don't remember who it was, but was talking about, well, why don't we have a competition? I think some other communities might have tried this and see what entrepreneurs are out there that may be flying under the radar that need some sort of impetus to be able to come forward and say, hey, what's out there? So we created this competition called Made in Lufkin. And we had an application process. We had a subcommittee that went through the applications, sort of narrowed down those applicants, those contestants, if you will, and then we for a day interviewed them and let them do basically a little dog and pony show on either their idea or their product or their service.
It's like going to Shark Tank.
It kind of was. And that was the whole intent, was to hopefully kind of create that. We partnered up with the Small Business Development Center, at the college as kind of a vetting mechanism too. They do a great job out there of kind of being the first line of defense when someone has an idea and a concept about a business and not sure how they want to get that structured or funded or whatever. So we certainly used them as kind of a clearinghouse as well. We had 7 or 8, maybe 10 applicants, narrowed it down to 4 or 5, and then went through the Shark Tank process, as you called it, and came out with a winner, which I believe was Tomei Catering.
Yes.
At the time. And so, and of course, Brittany's a great story. Everyone knows, I think, Brittany's story, and
everybody loves to eat Brittany's food.
Absolutely.
That's always the best part.
Absolutely, can't get enough. Unfortunately, we didn't do it a second year. It's always kind of there, but as things change and as directions and focuses change, then that didn't happen again. But certainly still kind of in the back of the minds of the board is that something we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's so fun to be able to watch where Brittany started and where she is now. And really during all of this pandemic with COVID, to watch that she's moved from solid catering now to solid takeout, and to see that her numbers have actually increased because people need the ease of getting food and being able to take it to people that are sick, even with COVID. And so it's been interesting to watch her numbers increase throughout all of this instead of doing what the opposite of so many small businesses have done during COVID.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to kind of touch on the beginnings of this organization. How did you each particularly get involved in it, and kind of what inspired you to get involved and inspired you to kind of start this and move along with that?
Well, Lufkin, it's kind of hard not to be involved in something.
It's true.
It's kind of bred in all of us, whether you grew up here or transplant here.
Right.
There's so many opportunities. Leadership Lufkin, with Salvation Army, the United Way, and everything to civic clubs, Lions, Rotary, Junior League, and so it's really hard to avoid.
It is. I joke often that if you're involved in Lufkin, you're eating lunch Monday through Friday at some type of event. Like you're not paying for lunch usually. It's through a membership that you're in, or there's a luncheon to be had pretty much every day of the week here.
So kind of knowing that's out there, an expectation, a desire for sure, maybe somewhat of an obligation for some, but there's so many ways, there's so many organizations to be able to direct your time and talents and resources to. So you get to really pick the litter, I guess. And so if you just make, if you have a passion or if you have an interest in something, just make that known, and next thing you know, you're on the board. And if you're not careful enough, then you're not running it.
Yeah, right. What specifically drew you to this? So there's a lot of options out there. What was it specifically about economic development that?
Well, it's like I was explaining to Tara earlier. Economic development is basically just runs through every gamut of a community. And being a business owner, having grown up here, moving away for college and then coming back, and understanding that, I invest in my company, I invest in my family, I invest, in the church that I go to. I need to invest in the community I attend, and live. And so, what better way to give back than to be a part of something that can literally affect the entire gamut of a community. And so, with the Economic Development Partnership, knowing that it had a long history, it's in a constant state of transition, which is not a bad thing. It's challenging, but what's great about it is we have the flexibility to impact lives in a myriad of ways. Sometimes we lose a little bit of that focus because we have such a wide spectrum of how we can participate, how we can engage in the community from an economic development standpoint, but it does create a lot of variety and diversity there. And so if I can make an impact there, then somehow that transcends and creates a ripple effect, and it'll help throughout the community.
Absolutely.
Mr. Rufus, you were born and raised here, grew up here. I know your parents gave so much to this community and left you a great legacy. And tell us about what are some of your passions of economic development from a young age that you can remember watching your dad do that influenced you to continue to develop?
Yeah, there was kind of an informal predecessor to the Economic Development Partnership, and I don't even know if it had a name, but I remember Oscar Brookshire, Pitzer Garrison was very involved in it, and I know my dad, George Henderson, I'm sure that Murphy, there was a lot of people involved with it. And so I grew up obviously in a very economic development type of a family. You don't want to play Monopoly with us. And so, I heard the stories of them doing the property around what I call the Cow Palace and that whole area economic development-wise. But if you're in Lufkin, you're going to be civic-oriented, whether it's the Lions, church, whatever. But we all have talents, and I've been involved in a lot of nonprofits, but I like I like economic development, and I think that is one of my talents that I felt like I could return to the community. I believe that as I've said before, Lufkin has been started as a manufacturing hub, and we have some of the most highly qualified machinists, welders, supervisors. And the scariest thing to me is what are their children going to do? Mm-hmm. And so to me, and I think every civic leader should be worried about how do we provide jobs so the kids don't move off. And so I've wanted to spend a lot of my efforts and talents, I would say, in furthering economic development, specifically for the kids and to keep people in town.
Do you feel that's a shift, I don't want to say away from, but different areas aside from manufacturing that or shining a light on manufacturing in a different way?
And see, I don't have any manufacturing bones in my body. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to make anything. Mm-hmm. And so manufacturing just seems to be where I find the most talent.
Sure.
But, I would support, like Tomei. I mean, I think there's tons of entrepreneurs. I think there's something in the water in Lufkin that breeds entrepreneurs. You don't dare mention an idea at lunch in a crowded room because it will get taken.
That's so
but
true.
Manufacturing just happens to be some of the ones that has been the lowest hanging fruit that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I know several years ago you were you were kind of the point person behind Love Tech Skiers and getting the right people in place. And why don't you tell us the history of that and kind of how that came to fruition?
Yeah, that is, to me, what Lufkin and Angelina County, you really got to say Angelina County. That's what Angelina County is all about, is we had already, with Lufkin Industries, the premier gear repair manufacturing facility in America. Now, there's other ones out there, but they were the cat's meow. And a lot of changes going on with Lufkin Industries, and their top engineer on the gear repair side and one of the top salesmen says, hey, we think we can do this on our own. And so they approached Angelina College to get a little bit of help on how to get going on finances and whatnot, and then the college pointed out a local banker. The local banker said, hey, Rufus might be willing to help. And it was real easy to take their passion and their knowledge, go find some local investors, and then the Economic Development Partnership was a major part of that. It's really hard getting the funds for startups, and you can get 95% of the way or 90% of the way, and it's that extra 5 to 10% that you got to have. And thank goodness the Economic Development Partnership was around to get it there. And if you don't mind me just on a roll,
sure.
that company, we got it all started, and the goal was to find a larger partner to take the baton and run with it. And so we got it up and running, expanded the business, and then found a tremendous partner, Sumitomo Manufacturing of America, which is a division of Sumitomo. They came in, kept all the employees, bought the business, and they're so excited about Angelina County. This is actually a county in America where you can find machinists, you can find people to where if you're growing the business, they're there. And they're very excited about Angelina County.
We were talking about that with Tim Stacy, actually, when we were talking to him last week, and the fact that, you have all these new companies that are coming in. You've got people that have been trained that may need to be retrained and tweaked to learn this new position that they're going into a new job. But how fortunate we are to have Angelina College and to have SFA who work with the EDP and who work with the manufacturers to make sure that the people in Lufkin and Angelina County and our surrounding 12 counties that come in on a daily basis to work, to make sure that we've got resources to be able to get them ready to go back to work if they've been laid off by Lufkin Industries or other places. So we're in a beautiful little bubble right here in East Texas.
Yeah.
Yep.
During a medical emergency, every minute matters. That's why at Woodland Heights Medical Center, you'll find less waiting where you need it most, in our emergency room. In fact, we will work diligently to have you initially seen by a medical professional in 30 minutes or less. And because we're a full-service hospital, we can provide more care if you need it. Less waiting, faster care. Only at Woodland Heights Medical Center. Woodland Heights Medical Center is owned in part by physicians.
Are you interested in buying or selling real estate? I'm Becky Cota, broker and co-owner with my husband Kevin here at Century 21 Cota Realty. We have 21 agents that are highly trained and committed to delivering an extraordinary buying or selling experience. Contact us today to see how we can help you.
One of the things you kind of touched on earlier, Kevin, was talking about these small businesses who are just starting, and you touched on it with startups and it being an expensive process. For those who are listening out there who are entrepreneurs or are considering starting a business, can you walk us through the pipeline, kind of the path to that here in Angelina County? You know, what are some keys to success to kind of getting started off, and what kind of advice would you give someone who's listening who's considering starting a business or just starting one?
Good question. We touched on it a little bit before, but Lufkin is in Angelina County, and I have to stop myself too, as Rufus said, it is a countywide effort. But Lufkin and Angelina County is very fortunate to have the Small Business Development Center at the college. They have a program, a tried and true methodology of working through from concept to ribbon cutting to kickoff to expansion with entrepreneurs and startup businesses, from a business plan to understanding cost, understanding expense and profit, how to capitalize the company, where to find that capital, maybe where to locate. And it's a great vetting process to be able to say, hey, I've got this idea of making this or serving this or whatever, but I just don't know how to get the ball rolling. And so it's a great resource there. From there, it can be a little bit more organic from the standpoint of, as Rufus mentioned earlier, in Lufkin, the whole process is more network oriented.
Sure.
So, and that's really where I feel like the EDP can shine too, is being able to connect people together that can help one another in some way, whether it's banking, whether it's real estate, whether it's mentorship, whatever. And there's always people willing to help.
Sure.
You have to be careful, as Rufus said. You don't want your idea stolen. Just kidding. But there is a network there that's kind of already in place, and it's just a matter of getting plugged in. So I would highly recommend starting there. Obviously, if there's someone that whether it's a banker or an attorney or just a buddy or whatever, you want to be able to bounce these ideas off of, because I don't know what the ratio is, but there's a high percentage of startup businesses that don't make it.
Absolutely.
Which is what makes them hard to be bankable. Which is why you can't plan enough.
Right.
On the front end, and know what your challenges are going into it, and then having a support system behind you. And I mean, Rufus, I'm sure you've got some. Yeah,
to me, there's really two keys in starting a business, and the most important period is what I call scorekeeping, and it's bookkeeping. And the college can help you roughly flesh out some numbers, but if you don't know the numbers behind your business, you got a good chance of not succeeding. But more than anything, scorekeeping means knowing every month your profit and loss to the T. And that sounds obvious to people, but it isn't when you're an entrepreneur starting out, because you're working daylight to dark just keeping the business run. Right. I've never found an entrepreneur yet that if they have good bookkeeping, good scorekeeping, can't make the adjustments on a monthly basis to right the ship. But if they don't have the scorekeeping, before they even know they're underwater and sunk. So scorekeeping is the most important thing. The second thing is, and this is where the ETP comes into place, is never start a business with just the amount of money you think it's going to take. I can tell you that I've seen people build cushions and blow through them. So whatever you're doing, if you think you need $1, get $2. And be very, very conscious with spending money. Don't buy a building, rent a building if you can. Do anything that keeps the capital in the bank for a rainy time. So those two things I think are the most important.
Fantastic advice.
And I'll say we've mentioned the SBDC, and then you've talked about bookkeeping, and an organization that is great here in Lufkin is the Legacy for Financial Institution. And Joe Cesar, who used to be at the SBDC, as he was working there, he saw that that's really what people did not understand. And so if you're listening and you think that's the portion that I need the most help with, reach out to Joe and Alana and see what they can do, because they really are there to make sure that your bookkeeping and finances are in place and checked before you ever make the first step. And so they're a great resource, and I can't plug them enough for a new entrepreneur. They would be a great tool.
Really good advice. I mean, if you're out there and you're just starting, I mean, this is really good wisdom from people who've been doing it, a lot longer than I have or many others have. So awesome. Thanks.
So I know you have your hand in a lot of other economic development projects. What else would you like to let the listeners know that you're passionate about?
Well, I want to plug the EDP here for a second, because I was on it for a while back in the 90s. I wasn't on it when it started. But, the EDP set in place where we got ETech. He helped them find the building and all that. So the EDP helped out tremendously Angelina Tank here in Lufkin with the Shell building.
Yep.
They were able to move in, and that was a big help. And just to give you an idea, that company, I think before the oil bust, was at 90 employees here lately, and they're down to 70 now, but they're still in business when their competitors are going bust. And this kind of gets into the quality issue. They're shipping tanks past 6 to 7 competitors to West Texas and New Mexico because the quality is so high.
It's fantastic.
In Angelina County. And you got to keep in mind, when you're shipping tanks, freight's one of the biggest issues.
Sure.
And that's another example. And you talk about Angelina College, they have the welding department, which is most tanks are welding. But this is just a great place for a entrepreneur to start a business. And between the 4B and the EDP, I'm sure y'all still got some money. There's a lot of resources.
Yes. Not as much, but yeah.
Can y'all talk about the resources and how does the funding process work? Is this something that you look for donors for, or how does that funding work?
Great question. So, when I say resources, there's money, capital, there's knowledge, there's the network, there's training, there's all kinds of issues or items that can be considered resources. So specifically talking about the capital component. So we do have a dues structure. We have a membership, as I mentioned earlier, that's public and private. The college, the county, some municipalities around, and then a lot of businesses participate. And so our operations, we try to keep our operation expense very, very low. So we're adding to the kitty each year through our operations and dues. We received, and I say we, the EDP received a gift before I got on board that kind of propelled a corpus, if you will, a funding mechanism that allowed an additional revenue source at first, and then because it was a real estate deal, then was able to sell that real estate and take the proceeds from that and put it into the coffers in a restricted type account for economic development initiatives. Originally, though, that initiative was for a brick and mortar economic development purpose. We have been able to kind of restructure that and to redefine economic development from brick and mortar to capital help, whether that's for business expansion, business startup in the form of a loan program. And so, thanks to Rufus and his vision with the Lovetex gears, and being able to take those funds and deploy them into the community in the form of a loan, then we were able to provide that last 5% that Rufus was talking about, getting the company to the next level to be able to get started. And then we're able to get that money deployed, earn some interest, very low interest, but be able to earn some interest on that, get that paid back so that we can grow that, so that we can have money, in the future to be able to loan to other companies. And that's what we've been able to do. To date, the Lovetex gears borrowed the money, they paid it back. We were able to take that and redistribute it. So we have 3 other companies right now, close to $400,000 out there right now. All the loans are current and creating some interest there. So that's another opportunity. We have not gone out and specifically tried to get any kind of a state or corporate type gifts. We'd love to do that, obviously, because I think we don't have a taxing base or any other kind of revenue generating base to be able to continue to grow our war chest, if you will. And so, I think that would be an opportunity, but that's something probably for the future to consider. Sure.
But you touched on the future there. What does the future look like for the EDP? What's on the horizon? If you can talk about some projects that you have coming up? And
I'll use the phrase that we were talking about earlier. I don't know. I've used that term more the last 3 months during this pandemic than I think we all have.
Oh yeah.
So golly, we want to be a safety net. We think the EDP can be a safety net. What do I mean by that? We need to be somewhat proactive, but we also need to be somewhat reactionary. Sure. So to be on the sidelines waiting to get called in and say, hey, I need some help. Okay, how can we help? Whether that, again, is through a loan, whether that is through connecting to another entity, whether that's through maybe a debt cog or through the state or through the EDC, maybe that's through the college. Is that just getting information together to be able to know how to help, or is it actually trying to find funding ways or assistance in some other way? So that's what we're talking about now. The board is talking about now is, okay, at some point we're going to get through the chaos that the pandemic is, and there's going to be, the smoke's going to clear, and we're going to have a more defined role. How do we need to be positioned to do that? How do we need to be positioned strategically, financially? What programs do we need to have kind of ready and on the back burner simmering, or how do we need to best deploy and how to be a quick response? We don't want to be too quick because we have limited resources, and so we don't want to be too hasty and get it all out there in one and then not have any more ammunition in the bag. So we want to be strategic in that way. So specifically, I'm not exactly sure yet, but we're in the process now. We're communicating with the public, and more specifically our investors in the EDP, and kind of trying to get a feel for the landscape of right now and what their horizons are, because every business is going to be affected independently of another. Sure. Some are lagging industries that aren't going to feel the effects for several months. Some are feeling the effects now, and the recovery periods are going to be very different. And so we need to assess what that is so that we know how best to react to those needs.
Excellent.
I think that we all agree that it's our duty and our responsibility, but I think it's also I know for me, it's not just economic development for what's happening now. It's economic development for what's happening when Annalise grown and wants to move back home, and where have we left a legacy of Lufkin and Angelina County for our kids and our grandkids. Sure. And I think with key players like the two of you in place, that we've got mentors and we have leaders that are directing our community in the right direction to be able to set up our future generations to be able to continue to be successful in Lufkin and Angelina County.
You know, the one aspect that we've not touched on that is really important is the public perception of economic development, and this is critical. Economic development is typically working with people that are starting out, or there's some risk, there's some hair per se with them. And there's a lot of risk helping people that need the help. I mean, obviously, if you made a CD guaranteed loan, you got no risk. Somebody starting a lot of business, you got risk.
Sure.
And there's going to be failures. There's probably been failures in economic development. And the public has to realize that economic development is sloppy. And it is, there's no slam dunks. The 4B, the economic development, anybody involved is going to do things which are going to end up failing. And the most important thing for the public to do is when they see these failures, don't jump on a negative wagon. Just realize, hey, that's part of life in economic development. And so that is a message I would say to the public. I don't know who's watching this thing, but you know.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Absolutely.
It's very, very true. Well, we appreciate y'all being here so much and letting the viewers and the listeners know what's going on and the background and the history of the EDP. And we're excited about the future of what's to hold and what's to come.
Yes, thank y'all so much. Good. We appreciate y'all being on. Real quick, if you're a small business owner who's interested in expanding or getting started up, where can they find you? Where can they find these resources?
Well, and I would expand on that, Blake, and say if there's any businessman, woman out there that wants to become more involved in economic development.
Sure.
We need investors, we need board members, we need ideas, we need information from the front lines of what they're facing. So you can call the chamber is the best location. We touched on it earlier, but the EDP does have a management contract with the chamber, and so we work in lockstep with one another, and so they're kind of our front door.
Perfect.
And so I would contact the chamber, contact Tara, and they can either give you the information or point you in the right direction.
Love it. Thank you all again. We really appreciate y'all coming on. Thank you
Great.
so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.